Honestly, like my career has been mostly as a founder and as a tech leader, and I've learned a lot of different skills. I learned product, I learned marketing, sales, capital raising, like all of that stuff. Heck, businesses that were like one person selling for $400 million or whatever, or other. So I've done mostly smaller deals, but that was really fun.
I advise companies on any kind of solution involving helping them scale their company through fundraising, sell their company. When we tried to acquire HP, it was a $33 billion deal.
My name is Pavleta Pavlova and I'm a fractional CFO. I run my own consultancy practice focusing on roll-ups.
I used to work in private equity for 5.5 years, and then I had an ambition to become an operator myself.
Whenever you look for an exit, it's important to understand what you want to achieve and get out of it. I would say that besides the monetary aspect of the deal, it's important to find a buyer who really understands your business. And I was an analyst in a 400 million transaction of a real estate portfolio.
Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be interviewing various 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs in the acquisition space. We will explore what they're working on, the deals that they've done, and the advice that they have for you based on their previous experiences. This video is going to be extremely helpful for anybody in the acquisition space and generally pretty interesting for anyone interested in business and startups. So to give you some context, Rollup Europe is Europe's largest acquisition-based community. So it's meant to be for entrepreneurs, operators, fund managers, and others in the acquisition space to connect, network, and explore potential opportunities together. It's really a first of its kind community based in Europe where there's just not a lot of community or spaces where acquisition professionals can interact or meet each other. So I was very lucky to go for this event in Europe during the summer, and that was when I was able to interview some of the attendees, and I've compiled all of those interviews to make this video. A little bit context on Pocket Fund. So we're a holding company and a buy-side advisory firm. So we have bought multiple software businesses ourselves, and we currently advise private equity funds, search funds, individual investors with end-to-end acquisition support. So we help them with their deal flow, negotiation, due diligence, and finally closing the deal and everything in between. So I hope this video is helpful to you guys. I think there's a lot of relevant advice in there, whether you're in the acquisition industry or just generally interested in startups. I'm going to be adding timestamps so that you can properly go through each of the interviews and skip any if you think they're not relevant. And I'll be adding links to all of the founders and entrepreneurs in the description below. Hey man, do you mind if I ask you some questions?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Awesome. So what is your name and what do you do?
I'm Peter Kalpakov. I'm managing director at Load Capital Partners. What I do, it's a interesting question. I advise companies on any kind of solution involving helping them scale their company through fundraising, sell their company, or actually working with various funds on their identification criteria of different companies. And I also hang around a lot of search funders, help them around and finding solutions for them.
Nice. So it sounds like your job requires a lot of different facets, a lot of different things that you have to do. What is your favorite thing about your job?
My favorite thing is like I'm in the know-how of a lot of industries. I'm seeing what is happening on SME or like a high level in the market before sometimes that information hits the news. So you're in constant in the actual economic cycle.
Interesting. So I still ask is, what is the biggest or your most favorite deal that you've been a part of?
I can tell you the biggest deal I have been is when we tried to acquire HP. It was a $33 billion deal. It was when I was in Xerox. We were 3 times smaller than them.
Yeah.
It was a hostile takeover. It was such a deep, interesting experience, which taught me a lot. It was orchestrated by Carl Icahn and Icahn Enterprises, so great learning opportunity. But the bad thing is that's when COVID hit and the deal actually didn't happen. But still, it was a learning, interesting experience.
Interesting. So it sounds like you've taken a a part of like literally probably dozens, if not hundreds of deals, what is one negotiation tactic that you've learned from this experience?
So in every negotiations, the key thing is to know this kind of term, it's zone of possible agreement or the ZOPA, and to understand that first of all, if you're working for a client, what is their zone of possible agreement, and also what is their best alternative.
Interesting.
So you have to know these things when you're actually entering into a negotiation, because if there is a deal which you somehow manage to push to be inside this zone, the deal is going to happen. If the two parties are too outside of this zone and their best alternative are outside, it's very difficult for a deal to happen. So my job is first of all to work with the different parties to understand where this zone is, and then to bring the parties together inside it.
Interesting. Nice. So next, I'm curious, like, because I know you've probably had experience with a lot of different industries, right? And now AI is all the hype, so I'm curious, like, do you think that AI is where it's at, or are there any other industries, that you think are being looked over?
So first of all, AI, it's one of the dynamic trends which is gonna create industry 5.0. It's disrupting a lot of businesses. It is disrupting a lot of products, and especially there is so much happening in the software space. Like a lot of investors are being a little bit unsure what is happening, like how they could become resilient to this trend. And in reality, is AI is going to disrupt a lot. You have to be at the forefront of that innovation, and how to be is it's $1 billion question. But I think the best way for investors is maybe to look around other industries which are right now AI proof, until they figure out how they can bulletproof their previous industry or previous portfolio companies.
What is the number one book that you've learned a lot from that you've used on your job?
Oh my God. There's so many great books. Like you can start with the fundamentals of investment analysis by the various Warren Buffett recommended books, but then you have to go through, I'm recently going through more social books. Like for example, there is this book that made such a great impact on me called Why America is Different Than Europe, or Why America Isn't Europe, which was creating parallels between Europe and America on their way of looking on productivity, looking on different social aspects.
How old were you when you were involved in your first $1 million deal?
It's an interesting question. I actually did a transition. I graduated to be a pharmacist, but then I wanted to be in finance. And I did the most unorthodox thing of starting actually on the buy side, working in P and corp desk. So I'd say like my first big deal was when I worked for Xerox. We were consolidating IT services companies. And we did a great job there.
How old?
I was in my early 20s.
Awesome. So actually, I know I said that was the last question, but you said you went from pharmacist to finance. So I'm curious, like, what made you make that decision, and I'm wondering if there's any skills or anything that you learned while you were a pharmacist that might have carried over, anything that you're even using right now, like to this day.
I would say it was, first of all, it was a top degree. Like you have to learn quite a lot. It's similar as learning medicine, right? I mean, it is medicine, yeah. Medics, they're learning how to diagnose disease. We're actually learning how to create the drugs that are treating it. So that gave me a lot of understanding on the human physiology, healthcare systems, pharma systems. Yeah. And actually, this is something that I carried through the years. I'm still advising healthcare companies. I'm still advising pharma companies. One of the most recent deals I did is I sold the pharma manufacturing plant in Germany. So this is the industry trend and industry analysis that I carry. So
awesome. So that's all the questions I have for you, man. Thanks so much for your time.
Sure. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Hey, man, do you mind if I ask you some questions?
Sure.
What is your name and what do you do?
My name's Ryan Bettencourt, and I run build and buy Healthco called Legion Works.
Interesting. And what industry do you focus on?
We focus on mostly software. We have to date focused mostly on like marketing tech, sales tech, stuff that we know, but we're expanding more to buy and hold for the long term. So we're thinking about a lot of other industries. Yeah.
Interesting. So why are you making that switch, from buying and then selling companies to buy and hold forever? Because they are very different mindsets as well.
Yeah. Honestly, like My career has been mostly as a founder and as a tech leader, and I've learned a lot of different skills. I learned product, I learned marketing, sales, capital raising, like all of that stuff. And so when we first started the company, we're like, we just need to buy companies that we can add that capability. Me and my co-founders to the various companies.
Yeah.
That does not scale. And actually, there's a bit of arrogance to it, right? Because it's like you're buying good companies, and you can go in and do something that they had to buy and hold for the long term. You look for a different kind of company, right? Like, so we've looked at very speculative businesses like a early stage investor would, right? What's the market? How far is it? How fast is it growing? Where is it going? Can we grow this thing by 25, 50%, 100% a month, like 100% a year? And that's more speculative, right? And what ends up happening in those markets is they go up and come down just as fast. And a lot of it is just from learning, right? A lot of it, the reason why we look at it, we look and we learn like, durable markets that are growing 3 to 5% a year. They probably have multiple reasons why they're going 3 to 5%. Or they're very important to their customers. They may have market growth trends, but they don't have like these crazy spikes in brands.
Not that volatile.
We want to operate the businesses. We want to be good to the societies we operate in.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I do think this is something that, I'm sure a lot of people in the room that we were just in are actually struggling with, trying to figure out between the two. So what advice would you have for somebody trying to figure out between the two? Trying to make a decision, because you have experience on both sides. So what advice would you have for them?
The big thing is like, what's your time horizon, right? I mean, do you want to get in and do this for a period of time and then get out? Is that is like sort of how we're wired is like startup people as well as like private equity. It's like how much and how quickly can I create wealth, right? So I think one is your time horizon, right? Like between the two. Two is like, what do you kind of love to do and how much believe in that? And three is like, how many resources do you have, right? Because
that's true.
If you have a lot of resources, like listening to a lot of the people here, right? If you have a lot of resources, you can spend more of your time. Like I could be digging in more to like growth marketing that I know really well, or product or something else. But when you don't have a ton of resources, like you have to do all of those things.
Couple of like quick fire questions for you. So what's the largest deal that you've been involved in?
So we sold a company that we raised VC dollars from blue chip VC. We sold that to private equity in LA. And the cool thing of that was like, that was a nice deal. But the more fun part of that was it was a very patient private equity, which is like sometimes this is a rare. But it was one individual's wealth. And his multi-billionaire is one individual as well. They created this private equity group. And those deals were really interesting. Like I did a bunch of diligence because I was the tech guy in the room. Right. So they did a lot of like branded goods and licensed goods and whatnot. So I got to look at some really interesting tech businesses, like tech businesses that were like one person selling for $400 million or whatever, right? Or other. So I've done mostly smaller deals, but that was really fun because we got both the deals that we did and the deals that we didn't do. We looked at a deal to buy a major American like sports league. Which was like fascinating, right? So we did a bunch of like fashion stuff. We did a bunch of stuff around like media because they did a lot of they had a movie studio, a bunch of stuff. So those are like the most those are super interesting deals because it was all one guy's money. Like they bought real estate, they bought media, they bought all sorts of stuff.
So the last question I have for you is, how old were you when you were involved in your first $1 million deal?
Yeah, probably later. So 32, maybe 31, 32.
Nice. Awesome. That's all the questions I have for you, man. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. Hey, man, can I ask you some questions?
Hey, yeah, no problem at all.
Awesome. So what's your name and what do you do?
My name is Guy Mitchell. By trade, I'm an accountant and a member of the Institute of Taxation, so I'm a chartered tax advisor. But that's kind of only 50% of me. I am involved with a business. It's a software roll-up. and I'm a director. Sorry, I'm a director of that business.
Interesting. So is there any particular industry or niche that you guys focus on?
Yeah, particularly software, so SaaS model businesses. I've been very successful in the past in working with software companies. My co-founder has his own software company that he built up as well, and we focus on those. They're great businesses. There's loads of energy. They're dynamic. I love the people that work within these businesses as well. So we get a lot out of working with those sorts of businesses.
Nice, nice. It sounds like you've taken part in a variety of different types of deals. I'm curious, what is your favorite deal so far, or something that really stands out to you?
But I guess for the business I'm currently in, favorite deal so far is a WhatsApp marketing platform that we've acquired. The co-founders there have come on board with us. They're great guys, great management team there, and a really good business. And I think where we come in, we've acquired the business or a majority stake in it, but we're using some of our experience just to help them grow the business and reach its full potential. So loads of energy in the business, and it's something we really like to tap into. So really enjoying working with them.
Awesome. The next question I have for you is, how old were you when you were involved in your first $1 million deal?
I guess it depends what you mean by $1 million. I've been involved in million dollar transactions probably about 2002.
Why? And so how old were you then?
So 2002, I was 28.
Nice. That's pretty young. Did you find the process daunting or the numbers daunting?
And initially, yes, but I think you begin to learn to take these things in your stride, right? And see, if you're surrounded by good people and you're working with good people, it makes it so much easier as well.
100%. I think you mentioned like good people a couple of times. I'm curious, is there, I'm sure you've worked with a variety of different types of people. So I'm curious, is there a certain trait that you look for? Any characteristics that you're generally looking for with the people that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably an easy one. It's driven people with energy, people that really enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah.
I really thoroughly, as you can probably tell, I thoroughly enjoy doing what I'm doing. And I get up each day going, what's new today?
Nice. And obviously you've been a part of multiple different deals I'm sure on both sides. What's the number one negotiation tip that you might have for other entrepreneurs?
Look, I think in terms of negotiating and tips around those, look, there's always an element of compromise here, right? But you've got to compromise in a sensible way. I think being honest with people, at the end of the day, they appreciate and say, I need a deal to look like this because of this.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And what we try and do when we acquire businesses, we bring the founders of those businesses on board with us. So we say, look, this is what we're trying to do. Actually, it works for you as well. And trying to make people understand that.
So I'm curious, what is your favorite part of your job?
Favorite part of my job, I think it's the problem solving, the challenge, and working with great people.
Nice. So I'm curious, does that ever get old? How do you keep it fresh?
Well, I'm 50 years old now. I'm not sure it ever will get old. I think just as I say, the energy just brings you to life. How do you keep it refreshed? I think we're lucky we work in an industry that is just changing every day.
Cyclical.
Totally, yeah. Some of the stuff that I got into in high growth SaaS back in 2011 is so redundant now. It's incredible, right? And its key is keeping pace. And I think it's always wonderful for me, people who are 20 years younger than me now, and I look at them, or look at me when I was 20 years old. Was I as advanced as those guys are? No way. Some of the stuff that's coming out is just incredible. So I think that's what keeps it fresh. It's keeping me fresh just by default.
Yeah, and a follow-on question to that, you mentioned the just keeping up with things, right? So I'm curious, especially now with the age of AI, with things changing so quickly, how do you do that, especially as a non-technical person yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think you communicate a lot with the technical people around about you. You understand from speaking to people in the market. You come to conferences like the one I've been at today.
Yeah.
And you just pick up the traits of what's going on. As I say, you never stop learning, right? So you're always trying to take in information that way. But I mean, can you ever keep yourself up to date fully? I'm not sure you can, but you give it a good try, and as I say, it's great fun learning.
Awesome. That's all the questions I had for you, Guy. Thanks you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Nice to see you.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, can I ask you some questions?
Yes, of course.
What's your name and what do you do?
My name is Pavleta Pavlova and I'm a fractional CFO. I run my own consultancy practice focusing on roll-ups.
Interesting. So how did you come across the role of being a fractional CFO?
So a couple of years ago, actually, I was hired as a financial controller in a roll-up, and I spent there almost a year and a half. And after that, I had this idea of building my own business and decided to give it a go. And 1 year, I mastered mustered the courage. And so I signed my first client, and ever since we've grown to 10 clients. So that's 10x.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. And can I ask you one thing? Like, it sounds like you're very specifically focused on roll-ups, right? Why did you choose roll-ups specifically?
I think it gives you a very good niche and also an opportunity to scale. The work is very complex, and it gives me the edge by knowing how to do consolidation, how to do M&A. And I wanted to build something that kind of stands out, and running just a traditional accounting practice meant I won't scale that fast. So I think that very much my working in a roll-up and my exposure to financial due diligence gave me the edge, and that's why I decided to build my company this way.
Awesome. Interesting. So it sounds like, you're actively working on, with 10 clients, I'm sure you're working on multiple different things every month, So how do you juggle between all of these different clients? And what's advice would you have for somebody looking to do the same as what you've done?
So I think the first thing is building the right team, having the right people work with, and also building up a very good network. So every time a client comes to me and they ask a question about, for example, fundraising, I can quite easily point them to the right direction. And also it's about priorities, sitting down, speaking with the client, understanding what's important to them, and just structuring the work this way. I love to work with deadlines. So I'm very clear on when something is going to be delivered, and I make sure it's always done on time. And every time I start working with the client, we go through a cleaning up process where we make sure that we remove all the friction, and then work becomes a lot more easier.
Nice. So let me ask you one thing. What is your favorite thing about your job?
The people I work with. I think that at this point I very much enjoy the sales side more than the just crunching the numbers, but I've been very fortunate and I'm surrounded by a great group of people. So it's definitely the people.
Awesome. And on the flip side, what's the hardest thing about your job?
I don't have a day off. Like, I'm always working.
24/7.
Yeah, and I think that, I'm always working, so I don't have a day off. Yeah, I would say that.
That is difficult, yeah. So what is the largest deal that you've been involved in?
For me, I would say not the biggest deal, but the most amount of work we've done is working with a client that acquired 8 businesses in 1 year.
Interesting.
So that's been quite a challenge for us.
That sounds hectic, yeah. Awesome. What would you say is the one thing that you learned from that?
Prioritization and making sure that you've got the right finance infrastructure in place, because without having it, you cannot grow through acquisitions. So making sure that you've got the right processes, the right infrastructure is just basically your setup for greatness, I would say.
Makes sense. And working with so many different clients, do you see any common weaknesses? Yeah.
I see quite a lot of them, and one of the main things is when they buy a business, they don't want to change anything, and they want to stay from a side and have it more maybe not decentralized, but not having that much control of it.
Yeah.
But for things to work, for you to scale, for you to be profitable, you very much need to do a DDI, and you need to be focused on that business. So I think that going through implementing a common chart of accounts and setting up processes is one of the challenges that come across.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. That's all the questions I had for you. Hey man, can I ask you a question?
Hey, sure. Sounds good.
What is your name and what do you do?
My name is Pavel Prokofiev, and I'm the head of M&A for SaaS.group, which is a software aggregator.
Interesting. How did you get into the industry?
So I used to work in private equity for 5.5 years, and then I decided I had an ambition to become an operator myself. So I applied to work for Constellation Software, which is one of the most established and famous aggregators. I spent 2 years there, and then one of the founders of SaaS.group reached out to me, saying, hey, we want to 10x the platform. Do you want to join us? And that's how I joined them as a head of M&A now, almost 4 years ago.
Nice. So I'm sure you've done a variety of deals, in the time that you've been there. I'm curious, what is your favorite deal so far?
I've done about 15 in SaaS.group, but I think one of the most favorite ones is that we had a founder that we stayed in touch for 3 years. It's a company that was ran by one founder with one employee, doing over 2 million in cash EBITDA. And we have bought the company. We have fully transitioned the business to a new management, and we're hoping to 3x the business in the next couple of years.
Nice, nice. I'm curious, like, what's your favorite thing about your job?
Well, I like that there's a lot of variety in what I do. I have team that I manage. We are 7 people based remotely in Europe. Every day is quite different. I get to work on diligence. I get to negotiate acquisitions, work on some post-merger integration stuff, while also contributing to a broader running of the business. So it's a very, very variable job with a lot of interesting things to do every day.
Interesting. So it sounds like there's a lot of different skill sets that you have to constantly utilize, while you're on the job. Were these skills that you had before you started, or did you pick them up on the way?
I would say that, so I'm a qualified accountant. I had a very basic accounting and finance knowledge. I also have a management degree, so that helps me understand the basic numbers. So then I would say that everything else you pick up either through the job, learning on the job, or by reading textbooks or doing kind of webinars. It's very, very hard to grow very fast just by doing the job.
What's the one advice that you would have for Pavel 10 years ago or 8 years ago before you made the switch to Constellation software?
Just kind of looking back, I think it's very easy to work for many years in very reputable companies, but not really learning much. I would say that make sure that you work for the people that are willing to teach you, and that's something that I've taken on myself personally. I'm really working hard with each and every team member to give them the best career advice ever and make sure that they can grow to become what I am today, 3-5 years from today.
That's actually really interesting. So I'm curious, like, I know you mentioned your team a couple of times. I'm curious, like, what is there one trait that you're usually looking for, or are there a couple of traits that you're looking for, when you're looking to hire somebody or work with someone?
I think we like hustlers. We like people who have grit, who can hustle to get the job done. If they lack certain capabilities, we're really looking for the attitude, right? We can teach them the capabilities, the skills, but if they lack that grit and persistence, then I think we will struggle.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, you've taken part in so many different deals on both sides of the table. I'm curious, what's the number one negotiation tip that you've learned across all of these deals?
I would say that you need to be extremely rational, right? So if you decide to reduce the price, as long as you can back it up by due diligence findings or some sort of a variables that emerge from the diligence, it's easy to do, but just make sure that you ground the negotiation in very basic numbers and frameworks. Don't make it abstract like, hey, the economy is changing, the Trump is putting tariffs and stuff like that. I think that's very, very important to be super honest with sellers and use kind of, a frameworks that are easy to explain and justify.
Awesome. I'm curious, what's the best financial advice that you've ever gotten from a mentor?
Don't overpay for deals. I think the overpayment is the number one factor for not making the returns, and even very good companies are worth something and you can overpay. So I think as long as you have the valuation that is justified by the value drivers and there's an underlying thesis behind it, you will be successful.
Awesome. And how old were you when you were involved in your first $1 million deal?
Well, because I was, I started in corporate finance with a big 4 firm when I was, I think, 22, 23, and I worked on very big deals from the very beginning. But I would say that only when I joined Constellation, I really got a feeling of what it takes to really work with the business, because there's a very big difference being an advisor on a $1 billion deal and then buying yourself a $5 million company.
Of course. That is a huge difference for sure. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? So, no, for sure. No problem. So, what is your name and what do you do?
My name is Manuel Amor. I'm co-founder at L40, which is an M&A investment firm.
Interesting. And how did you get into this line of work?
Well, I joined another company called Boopos. Boopos was an acquisition financing company. We were providing loans for people looking to acquire digital businesses like e-commerce or SaaS. So I joined the company originally as a chief operating officer.
Interesting. And so it sounds like Boopos would have had a hand in a lot of different types of deals, a lot of different types of entrepreneurs. So I'm curious, what's one takeaway that you had, from dealing with so many different types of deals and people?
Yeah, I would say a takeaway for founders, which is is the type of people we like to work with,
Yeah.
is that whenever you're looking to sell your business, it's important to get ready well in advance. Sometimes we see deals falling through because the financials are not ready, the founder doesn't have like a succession plan in place, sometimes the processes are not clean enough. So it's important to be always exit ready,
Yeah.
even if you're not looking to exit in the immediate short term. So I think that's a very good learning that many founders can learn, and this is something that we saw happening in the past, and that's why some transactions might not close.
Interesting. So Boopos was sold for a multi-million-dollar deal. So I'm curious from your perspective, like what is the one takeaway that you have from that transaction, right? Or from selling the company?
I mean, this goes beyond Boopos. I think whenever you look for an exit, it's important to understand what you want to achieve and get out of it. I would say besides the monetary aspect of the deal, it's important to find a buyer who really understands your business, has a plan for it, and it's someone to trust that you feel comfortable working with. Because in the end, the deal or let's say the story for the company or for the founder doesn't end when the deal is closed. You more often than not have to work for a number of years afterwards. So it's very important to have that kind of really close relationship with the buyer. I think that's something that from our end we value a lot when looking for a potential.
Interesting. That's actually really helpful. What would you say would be like the main shift, right? Maybe in mindset or in thinking thesis that you had to make, right? Going from those mid-market deals more off a market.
I would say in the end, we come from a very strong analytical background because as a lender, we have to analyze every deal we fund into the very much detail underwriting we should follow. So we leverage a lot of that into L40, definitely. I would say in general, when you move up market, you have to be very thorough in all analysis that you do. You work very closely with the founders to understand very well the company, understand very well the story, the value levers that you want to communicate,
Yeah.
and make sure that everything is very organized. You understand not only the company, the financials, everything. So you make sure that the process goes smoothly and no surprises happen along the way. What can you raise?
Yeah. The last question I have for you is, how old were you when you first took part in your first multi-million-dollar deal?
Yes, I remember that because it was not on the software space, it was on the real estate space, and I was an analyst in a 400 million transaction
Oh,
of a real estate portfolio. So I was 25 years.
interesting. Awesome. That's all the questions I have for you, man. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.